Recently, I was watching a video discussing a 25-yard, 50-yard, 36-yard zero for rifles, and I was kind of intrigued by that. And so that person who was talking about, okay, here is your, let's say this is where your zero is, let's say it's 25 yards or 50 yards or 36 yards even. And then he started talking about now your point of impact is going to be here for 100 yards and here for 200 yards or something like this, and then coming back down 400, 500 yards like this. Now I thought, whoa, there's something really wrong or something very different about that approach. And what it all came down to as I was thinking that over is what we call what we need to talk about is the definition of what is zero. Zeroing a rifle is when the point of aim equals point of impact. But there's more to it. Point of aim equals point of impact, and after which the bullet continues to fall from that point forward. That's a very important caveat, that after which the bullet continues to fall. That caveat is really important. So what we call that is what we call the primary zero, kind of that traditional zero we have in our minds of point of aim equals point of impact. And we're normally thinking about, for rifles, a 100-yard, 200-yard zero. Now this may all sound like semantics, but really if we think about it, to clearly communicate, we have to sometimes define our definitions because there's subtle differences. And in this case, that definition of zero is very important. We talked about the primary zero, but now we also need to talk about that secondary zero. And the secondary zero is the zero that's close. That's that 25-yard, 36-yard, 50-yard zero that was being talked about. We talked about earlier, and also was being talked about in the other video I was referring to. And what that is all about is really the optic or sight to bore offset. Let me explain. Years ago, the height above bore of most optics was kind of traditionally 1.5 inches. And that secondary zero that we're talking about was kind of ignored because it was so close outside the barrel that really no one took too much care about it. And also, a lot of those rifles were set up for deer hunting and those sort of things. And so the traditional shot was kind of the 100-yard or 200-yard shot at big game. But today we're seeing rifles with a much higher placement of that, in this case, the optic, above the bore. The optics are becoming more sophisticated, I would say. Larger tube sizes. This is a 34 millimeter tube, and of course larger objectives, thus requiring that the scope be mounted higher. So now what we're talking about is not that kind of traditional 1.5 inch offset. We're now talking about doubling it. It is now a 3-inch, roughly a 3-inch bore offset. And so the distance at which we start seeing that secondary zero is going to amount to something. It's going to be, maybe 50 yards or 30 yards or something like that. So, most of the time this discussion is focused not so much on a .308 Winchester Ruger precision rifle like the one behind me here, but more so with the AR-15 and the 5.56 type of rifles. Oftentimes those have a very large offset as well. Mounting scopes up on top of those things, elevated head positions on the rest, elevated optics, those sort of things. And so again, that secondary zero comes into play. But the point of the video today is not so much to talk about all the nuances and all the differences about zero, but rather to discuss the clear communication and definition of what a zero really is. Remember, zero, primary zero, is point of aim equals point of impact, and after that point, the bullet continues to fall. Secondary zero is kind of incidental and based on that optic to bore or sight to bore offset. Hey, if you've got any ideas about this, like to comment about this video, feel free to do so. Pop it into the comments below. Once again, thanks for watching.